Washington Commanders 34, Cleveland Browns 13. Commanders move to 4-1, the powerhouse Washington Commanders. Browns fall to 1-4. Another strong game for Jayden Daniels, finishes with 238 through the air and a passing touchdown, another 82 yards on the ground for Daniels. And, Commanders, even with some mistakes in there, still finding ways to put up a lot of points.
Yeah, and so I'm so impressed by Jayden Daniels because not just because of the sort of record-setting blah, 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 but every week he's winning in a different way and being given a different challenge and still finding the answer. Like sequentially, these defenses are throwing a different puzzle at him each week, and he's coming up with the correct way of attacking it. So in this game, he wasn't completing 80-90% of his passes. They were actually causing some problems. They were knocking him off his game. But then, 4th and 3, I'm just going to run and pick this up and keep the chains moving and have a big play there as well. So he was able to overcome that and still keep cooking. His rushing threat is so – there's a couple of quarterbacks out there that, the rushing threat with a guy like Lamar Jackson or whatever, it's obvious, it's ever present. It hangs over the entire game. Like you can't switch off for a second. And then there's a couple of quarterbacks out there that are almost as devastating, but it's much more sort of subtle and contained and not as obvious and in your face, but they every now and again they just decide they're going to stick a dagger in your heart as a defense. And it's usually in key situations. Daniels is one of them. And Kyler Murray, I think, is another where it feels like his rushing threat should be almost a bigger part of his game based off the plays where he does break it out. And you're like, wow, that's just unstoppable. Daniels did it in this game where we got, a few carries that were just you can't defend that. He's too fast, too dynamic, and just carved up this Browns defense.
Don't you feel, I tweeted yesterday, I feel like Jayden Daniels has the best acceleration of any quarterback. And I'm not trying to say this as like a knock on Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray or anything like that, but doesn't it feel like the NFL and pass rushers, and you saw this at LSU a lot last year, just aren't ready for his speed or how quickly he's to top speed or how quickly he maneuvers the pocket? I think Daniels' scrambling feel is among the best that I've seen. And again, remember, I think our listeners are pretty sharp. Understand what I'm saying. I think Lamar Jackson is still the best running quarterback in the NFL, and he does most of his running from designed runs, and he is the absolute best at it. Acceleration, shiftiness, feel for the run game, setting up blockers. Lamar Jackson, I think, is the absolute best at all of that. As a pure scrambler, it might be Jayden Daniels. And right now, he's leading the league with 235 yards on scrambles. It's about 100 more than anyone else. Yesterday, he had 5 scrambles for 62 yards. He also, as I said before, like coming into the game, is this the time you start to blitz them and speed them up a little bit and say, hey, make those big time throws, right? They had been, Washington had been throwing the ball short over and over and over again. Jayden Daniels completing almost 90% of his passes, making good decisions. If it's not there, he was taking off, picking up yards. Let's blitz him, right? Get after him. Make him make those special throws. Well, in this game, when blitzed, 7 of 10 for 141 yards. And one of the big plays that he had, there's an unblocked rusher, and he just scrambles out and hits Terry McLaurin on a 66-yard touchdown. So, yeah, Jayden Daniels winning in different ways in this game with more downfield passing, with more big-time throws. De'Ami Brown, big-time throw, touchdown just before the half. Had another one put right on Terry McLaurin's hands along the sideline in the end zone where McLaurin couldn't stay in bounds. So we knew Jayden Daniels has this fade ball, right, to his game. He hasn't needed it other than the Bengals Monday Night Football game, right? Hasn't needed it. But in this game, the Browns at least put a little bit of pressure on him to hit those throws, and he did that too, as well as the scrambling and the ability to just create something out of nothing. So once again, very impressed by Jayden Daniels. There was a red zone interception in there. Great play by Jok, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. But another very impressive game for the rookie, Jayden.
It really was. He looked, again, fantastic. And it's tough to say too much about how good he's been. And again, in a different way every single week. That's the thing that's been most impressive. Again, though, wasn't just him. I think there was a big play by Austin Eckler in there back after his concussion, right? Brian Robinson didn't get much going in terms of production, but still looks good. This is a well-rounded offense that has receiving threats, that has running threats, both at quarterback and at the running back position. Their offensive line was attacked a little bit by that Browns pass rush, and it didn't matter because Jayden Daniels is able to neutralize that with his scrambling ability. This is a team that has a great record and is not going away. I mean, this offense is absolutely for real. The defense may be a problem overall, but this is a good football team.
Anything else on Jayden Daniels and Washington's offense before we talk about the ineptitude of the Browns offense?
No.
Okay, let's go to the Browns side. The Commanders' defense, as you've said, not great. They deserve credit in this game. Frankie Louvu was outstanding. He has 3 sacks. He's a linebacker in name, but he's one of the very few in the NFL who's got edge rush type of ability, right? He's got that hybrid type of ability that shows up in certain games. He was just a mismatch for Browns running backs and their guards, really. Browns pass protection's horrible again. We can start there. But another game where Deshaun Watson was not good, and the production of the offense was not good, and it's now becoming, just record-setting how poor this offense is from a production standpoint.
Yeah, atrocious. And Deshaun Watson, coming off a pretty good game last week, even if it wasn't necessarily reflected in the overall production, back to being terrible in this game. And again, it's not all his fault. The offensive line was bad, and DeJuan Jones, who we've said a lot, actually has been pretty good as a pass blocking tackle and really hasn't been one of the problems, even though technically he's a backup. He had a bad game. So the Browns everything is finding a way of making it worse. But at this point, it's impossible to come to the conclusion that Deshaun Watson is not at least part of the problem. And, they've reached the stage now where at the end of every one of these games, everybody is getting asked, hey, is Deshaun Watson getting benched? And Kevin Stefanski was really strong in saying no. He's the starting quarterback. We're not even thinking about that. That's not the problem. Was very declarative in a way that at this point, I don't even know that that's particularly helpful. Even if you're going to go in that direction and keep him as a starting quarterback, by being so strong against it, you almost you either act like he's not part of the problem, which isn't true, or it looks like you are not noticing that he's part of the problem, which makes you look bad. So at this stage, to not at least find a way of acknowledging that your giant contract starting star quarterback is playing like crap, I don't think it's helping the situation either. And now you're left wondering if Stefanski even has the power to bench him. We've reached the point now where everybody is calling for that move. Put in Jameis, see if there's a spark, And some of the talking heads yesterday were saying it doesn't need to be a permanent thing, right? Just see if it sparks him. You can put Watson back in at some point, whatever. Just see if this does anything. We've got a game to win next week. Forget next year, long term, whatever. To just not even acknowledge that that's a thing, right? That, there's no possible way Jameis could do anything. It leads you to wonder either you are part of the problem by not acknowledging that this is an issue, or ownership is simply saying this is a line that we cannot cross. You do not have it's not within your remit to make a change of quarterback. We paid a ton of money. We threw all these draft picks at this. He is our starting quarterback, period. And Stefanski just has to go along with it and be made to look foolish by it.
I think that's what it is. They have to roll with him. Is it similar to the Bryce Young situation where, look, we said when Bryce Young got benched, Andy Dalton's not the future here. Maybe it's a mental break. You give him 6, 8, 10 weeks, and the goal for the Panthers should be get the best out of Bryce Young, try to salvage him. With the Browns, if he gets benched, it might be over, right? Can you bench Deshaun Watson and give him a 5-week mental break and, hope that he comes back because you're just tied to him contractually for the next 2+ years or whatever it is?
I think you can. Things like that have happened in the past. It's unlikely. It's like the Bryce Young thing where once you've made that decision, the chances of it going anywhere good in either direction are minimal, right? You don't make that move because things have gone well and, it's okay. This is a pathway to success down the line. You make that move because it's a train wreck and it's just the least bad thing that you can have happen is we make a change and maybe the next guy sparks something and okay, we might win a game or two, but it's awful, right? Like if you make this change, it is an acknowledgement that the guy you traded for has been an unmitigated disaster, but it's still better than letting him persist and dragging the entire thing into the mire with him. Like that's where you are. So yeah, you can go back to him eventually. You might not. And the chances are you might have to do a Russell Wilson sort of cap surgery on it and just figure out when it becomes palatable to get rid of him. But this is where you are. Like this is a team that was expected to be a playoff contender and, really make a charge. And instead you look like one of the worst teams in football. Your offense could get nothing done against what has been statistically one of the worst defenses in football. So you're not really left with any alternatives.
All right, one of my new favorite Sunday night pastimes is reading Austin Gale, old friend Austin Gale's Twitter or X. Austin has some depressing Sunday night tweets, usually futility-type tweets. And this is one. We've got a couple here from Austin, the late Austin Gale. Bottom 10 EPA per dropback averages, just weeks 1 through 5, any season since 2000. We have A.J. Feely, Ryan Leaf, Kyle Bowler, and right there, dead smack in the middle of the very worst, ranking 753rd, is Deshaun Watson. Just ahead of friend of the show, Chris Sims. Will Levis is right there as well. Cordell Stewart, Jamarcus Russell.
I mean, on that list are some of the worst quarterbacks that have ever played the game.
No offense to friend of the show, Chris Sims.
And some of the biggest busts that have ever played the game.
Yeah.
It's not a good list to be on.
I mean, whatever. And then if you just look at the Browns, right? You mentioned a couple weeks ago the jersey of the 20-plus quarterbacks who have tried their hand at, quarterbacking the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson's minus .30 EPA per dropback for the Browns, weeks 1 through 5 since 2000, is the very worst of any of those Browns quarterbacks. But unfortunately, he also has the second worst performance, which was last season. So Deshaun Watson, of all these Browns quarterbacks since 2000, now has the 2 lowest production seasons since 2000, since the Browns became the Browns, which is really 1999. But
right.
Again, I want to also preface this by EPA for a quarterback, I believe is a more of a team stat than something like PFF grade. I think it's more of a team stat. But the quarterback is the biggest driver of that stat. I think it certainly coincides with the Browns being terrible up front from an offensive line perspective. They look unprepared for any sort of stunt, twist, or any blitz of 5+ rushers. They look terrible. But Watson makes those plays worse. He just makes those plays worse. There was a play in the red zone yesterday. I know it's like easy from my couch with my fake Mark Brunell jersey to say, keep your eyes up in the red zone, man. You got a receiver wide open, but Watson just drops his eyes and just runs into sacks, runs into negative plays instead of doing anything that he did in Houston. So some perspective and just how bad it is right now. Sorry, Tyler, for the Browns in their offense right now.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.